Welcome to episode 2 of Actually Olympia, the podcast. I'm your host, Jay Burney, and with me, as always, is Kelly Purse-Brothett, our Director of Strategic Communications.
Hi, Jay. How you doing?
Really good. So here we go.
Yep. One more time.
We got a lot of great feedback on the first episode, so I'm really excited to get going on this one.
It is great to be back in the room with the couch for round 2. Yeah. It's a gorgeous day for a podcast.
Yeah, you bet it.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it. Let's get right to today's guest and topic. Welcome, Mike Reid. Mike is our Economic Development Director, and Mike, great to have you here as our second guest.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to do it.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, Kelly.
So, Mike, we always start with everyone's origin story. So I like to think of our employees as superheroes, and all superheroes have an origin story. So what's Mike Reid's origin story? So how'd you get here and the work that you're doing, and why is it meaningful to you?
I don't know if I'm quite the superhero, maybe more mild-mannered Olympian, but
That works too.
I grew up in Olympia. So I moved here in first grade and went through the Olympia public school system, graduated from Olympia High School. I've had a lot of jobs in the area. You know, I started off I was a paper boy for the Olympian back in the day. I worked at a couple of businesses downtown when I was in high school. I worked at a pub when I was in college. And then, my career, though, really kind of took shape about 17 years or so ago. I've been at the city now for 7, and then I was at the Port of Olympia for 10 years prior to that, working on their real estate, strategic planning, and sort of community building work there. But from an origin standpoint, I grew up for most of my life here in Olympia. I had a single mom. I had 2 older sisters. And I think kind of what drives me is that opportunity. We had a single mom that owned her home, that provided us the stability to be able to be rooted in a community and stay there. And I think that security and that opportunity is really kind of what helped mold me into who I am, and it really drives me for what I do. I want every Olympian to be afforded that opportunity, that they can give their families that safe space to call home and the opportunities to be able to grow.
Yeah, I love that, Mike.
I love that you're an Oli boy here, here, still in the community, trying to make the community better and more prosperous. I think that's.
Yeah, my family is predominantly still here. I have a sister that lives out of the area, but one sister and a brother-in-law are teachers here in town. My folks own a small business here in town. So, we're rooted. My wife also went to Olympia High School. So, yeah.
Well, Mike, it shows up. It shows up in everything you do, right? I mean, you've said this a lot. There's not a lot of bigger cheerleaders for the city of Olympia than Mike Reid, right? I mean, in everything that you do, that shows up. Mm-hmm. It's big.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
It's very cool.
I'm glad it's seen.
It's very cool. So the city sort of got into the work of economic development about 2015, about around the time that I arrived here. Then they hired their first economic development director, and there's also sometimes some question about whether a city should invest or should be doing economic development. You want to talk to us a little bit about why cities should invest in economic development programs and why Olympia made its decision. If you can talk about that.
That's a great question. I think at the root of it, communities are different. And communities need to decide and determine the path that they need and want to go. And the impacts that are facing their residents can feel very different. You will often hear me talk about the fact that the economy doesn't really care where our boundary lines as cities end and start. That is true, and that's why we have a really strong relationship with our peer organizations and our peer cities. But when it comes specifically to Olympia, we are a little different. As a community, our values may be different. Our ethos is different. The needs of our residents are different. We know things through data and demographic analysis that makes us different from Lacey or Tumwater or even just the broader county. Our economy will be made up differently. The types of employment, the sales tax that we generate, the needs of the residents that live here, they are all slightly different. I would also say just a little bit of not clarification, but just let me add a little context as well. Economic development is a term that I even hear locally with some questioning as to is it needed, is it real, is it valuable? And I think that's fair to sort of add that layer of scrutiny. I look at economic development and what it is now versus what it was 10, 20, 15, 30 years ago. It's very different. Economic development used to be about let's go recruit this large out-of-area business to come here and we'll put in the roads and the infrastructure so that they can be successful wherever they locate. And if that's here, then jobs will be here and everyone will be happy. That's not really how it's done anymore. And it definitely is not part of the Olympia ethos of the way that we do things. Right now, we recognize that investment, which is a good thing to have into your community, investment goes where people want to be and want to live. Right. So a lot of what I work on is recognizing and understanding what are the things that our community needs that make us a livable, lovable community. How do we leverage those assets to attract the kind of investment we need to be able to fill the gaps that we may have. So it's a little different. It's more about community building. And we are very strategic about who we're aiming that towards. We are trying to lift those that need the lifting. And that's the focus of economic development. In some ways, some folks may call that economic justice, or some folks may even call that poverty reduction. I think they're all different names and tools for the same sort of concept. Yep. So just wanted to add just my viewpoint of economic development.
I really like that because, there is a strain that like economic development is really about how people who already have money can get more money.
Yeah.
And I love that focus on community livability and prosperity.
It's not just about finding more revenue streams for the city, right? I mean, that's important, right?
Yeah.
We need those revenue streams to continue to offer the services that we provide to our community. But you mentioned, Mike, it's also really about lifting people up.
Right.
Yes. And I would add that it's through the course of your podcasts that you will hear what we as a community are being asked to do for the community at large is growing and becoming more complex. So we are seeing more needs throughout our community that are not being funded elsewhere in the system. So the residents here need to see it. So that means we have to grow our revenue base to be able to meet those needs. From your last interview with Darian on the housing and homelessness to, we'll talk, I'm sure, about other needs from public safety or climate adaptation. All of those things need the revenues that we can use to serve the community. Economic development is one of those mechanisms that ensures that we are growing the revenue to meet the growing needs.
Love it.
Right.
Good.
And also making it possible for families like you grew up, where someone can come and with their kids and root in and build a life.
Yeah. We want everybody, whether or not you're first generation to Olympia or you are multi-generations to Olympia. When you're here, we want you to be able to have that pathway towards prosperity.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, let's talk 2020. So what a really tough and challenging year for a lot of things. But in terms of being the economic development director, what a really challenging year. Talk to us a little bit about kind of how you helped us respond, because Mike, you led on a lot of things that ended up being regional efforts, and it's something I'm really proud of. But talk to us a bit about that work.
Yeah. Boy, 2020, that was hard. It was hard on everybody. I mean, I am not unique in that piece whatsoever. Our community went through a lot. I remember March 15th very, very clearly. That was when Seattle had publicly announced that they were canceling events and activities and sending people home. And that ripple effect, it hit hard and fast. And what we found really early on was that it was not the public health emergency yet. It was an economic crisis. It was businesses laying people off, events being canceled, and things really shutting down and shuttering. And so what we did locally here was to convene a stakeholder group of economic development practitioners. It was myself, Lacey, Tumwater, the county, the EDC, the Visitor Convention Bureau, Chamber of Commerce. The list goes on and on. I'm going to miss people in that one, but it
Yeah.
was a long list, and we started working really closely. I will say personally for me, it was just hard. I mean, it was hard on everybody. My wife is a nurse. She works in Tacoma, and she worked on the COVID response floor. And I think just like everybody, we were hit with, it was frightening. It was scary. We have 2 little kids that were
Yeah.
just starting school. And I do feel like as a community, that was a rallying point for us. I watched partnerships form. I watched people lean in while it was scary and it was frightening. There was a point of pride through all of that.
Yeah.
What ultimately happened through that process was, at first we convened what we called Thurston Strong, which was those groups of economic development practitioners. And we just quickly started looking at what's needed, like just to keep the wheels moving forward. And if you can recall, there was that period of time, you couldn't even get PPE that was needed.
No.
We didn't know where hand sanitizer was going to come from or masks were going to come from. One of the first things we did was just bulk purchasing and then just distribution, just to be able to get them out to the businesses so that when they could open and the way that they could operate safely, they had the tools necessary, and just try to remove one element of confusion from that. And that just bloomed into doing more work. We quickly got up the Thurston Strong website that was a repository of resources for folks. And then finally, dollars actually started to come in. And the federal government got us some money that we were able to distribute. We did various grant programs to restaurants and childcare and retailers and all sorts of small businesses just to try to keep them afloat.
Yep.
What we did find that was sort of interesting, the Puget Sound Business Journal actually did an analysis at one point in time, and they looked at the communities and what communities were receiving. There was a thing called the PPP loans.
Yep.
And Thurston County in Olympia was overperforming by a significant margin in terms of the number of businesses it has to the number of businesses that were receiving assistance.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I totally attribute that to the way that we brought all of the team members together so that we had a mechanism to hand folks off. I remember we had the emergency hotline. If you were a business, you could call. We had an emergency hotline. The EDC stood that up, and you could call and you could talk to a live person that would get you the help you needed. So that was 2020 was really hard. But it was also, it showed me that in a time of crisis, we have a very rich and resilient community that can pull together. So,
And we have a really great list of regional partners
absolutely.
that all come together and did come together around that. And we talked to Darian last podcast about just how that's come together. We've come together regionally around housing.
Yeah.
And so we can point to a lot of these bigger efforts that we're not in it by ourselves.
Yep.
Right. Just the creativity, of how people approach this really frightening. It was overwhelming, and
Thank you, Kelly, because that was one piece that, yes, there was the technical assistance and the access to grants, but I also saw, and we helped and supported and funded and worked with partners to do small things. There were murals that were painted on boarded windows. There was a live music series that the Olympia Downtown Alliance helped coordinate with the Art Space Alliance to get that. People were missing live music. And so you could get that sort of on demand. We did just sort of fun things. We tried to light up places. We tried to do some unique things. So,
And some of that stuck, like the lighting, right?
Yeah.
I get more compliments on how much we've lit up downtown and how people never want to see it go away.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
sorry, because you're going to see that in my budget probably every year going forward.
And that's okay.
The lighting piece and what I find is we do at the city, we have to do some planning. We never want to sort of run out there sort of unplanned. But a lot of times the community, planning doesn't always excite them. We have a
Yeah.
couple of folks that get excited to get involved in planning.
It's the doing.
It's the doing
doing,
and the seeing. And so when the community when the community sees something in a physical way that we have changed the landscape, lighting. I mean, that was what was going on. That we knew it was the holiday season of 2020, and we thought we've got to bring people downtown. Downtown, these businesses need the support. Let's light this place up.
Yep.
And every year we've been doing it since, and it just has made that place feel more special, and we get a lot of public feedback
Yeah.
on that. So it's just small things.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Make big impact though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So talk a little bit about the work that went on around Olympia Strong. I know you did a lot around public engagement and
So what we did is we took what was Thurston Strong,
Yep.
this sort of regional model of economic development and sort of leaning in. And one of the things very early on in the Thurston Strong work was we knew that the economy had changed.
Yep.
And we could either try to create that plan that would take us back to the old economy, or maybe now's the time to think about what is the future that we want? What is the future economy that we are trying to get towards? Economy that is more equitable, more just, more resilient. And so we, at that regional level, built that model. Then we as Olympia, we took it one step farther, thinking and recognizing, back to what I was saying at the beginning, everybody in every city is just a little different. So how do we right-size that concept of Thurston Strong, this sort of rallying around partners and addressing the needs and barriers of your community? How do you turn that into a regional-sized or a city-sized approach that you can build initiatives and tactics and objectives and measures around? And so that's ultimately, we took that Thurston Strong, we moved it to Olympia Strong. We did that one really differently too than any planning project that I've seen at Olympia so far. We knew that we wanted to get out to the people that make up our economy, the people that live here. So our community engagement practice with that was much, much different. You know, a lot of times you'll see things like let's have an advisory committee and then we'll have a public open house. Great things to do, but in this one we wanted something richer. So we had some interns, we had staff. We went out to the community. We
were everywhere.
We were everywhere. Public events. We had focus groups. We had person on the street interviews. We went to every city advisory committee. We had focus groups with different subsets of our population, from adults with disabilities to renters to folks that were justice involved. We really wanted to hear from different segments of the community to understand from them, what does it mean to have the economy work for you?
Yeah.
Like, what do you need? What are those barriers? What are those, what are the pieces that might be missing? Or what are the pieces that are working and you want to see more of?
Yeah.
Or where are there gaps? And so when we have those conversations with our population, we heard some very interesting things. I do also want to say one of the things that, back to that point about communities being different, we know some things about our community just from data. This isn't, this is just pure numbers, census level data. We know that we have more jobs in Olympia than we actually have Olympians of working age. So we have about 35,000 Olympians of working age. We have 60,000 jobs in Olympia. That's not the same for everybody.
That's right.
So Thurston County, as an example, Thurston County may have 180,000 jobs, but they probably have a fraction of that, of the working age. So I think Lacey, if I'm guessing, they have the same amount of working age people, 35,000, but they have, I think, 25,000 jobs. So Lacey's objectives and ours and how we work,
totally
and serve,
different.
they're going to have to be different.
Yeah.
Also, Olympians, our poverty rate in Olympia is higher. So we have, and our median household income is lower. There's a whole host of things that feed into that, but we're a number of percentage points lower from a poverty rate than the county average.
Yeah.
And so as we look at those strategies in Olympia Strong, and we're hearing from our residents that live here, it's no surprise to me that we're going to hear some interesting goals and objectives.
So what surprised you about
what was the most
Yeah,
surprising
what's
thing?
the most surprising thing you learned?
It comes back to that question, I think, about people living kind of close to the edge.
Yeah.
What we heard, and we know this in the data, that a third of all Olympians are really kind of living on that cusp of it being inaffordable and struggling. And then when you talk to folks and you have that sort of resonate in what does that look like, that was the surprising piece. A couple of things that we found in there is specifically true to folks that were homeowners, not surprisingly, felt more economically secure. The degree of renters that did not feel economically secure was significant and noticeable. And so we even backed that one up with a survey where I think it was, I think 70% of all renters indicated that there was some mechanism or some disruption that they had experienced. Either they had lost hours, had struggled to make a mortgage or a rent payment, had difficulty buying food, some sort of economic insecurity.
Yeah.
It was like, over 2/3, whereas for homeowners it was less than a quarter.
And that's
very different realities.
That's
That's
right.
really powerful because we're a renter majority city.
Yeah, we do have more renters than we have homeowners. And that's, I think, one of the things from a strategy standpoint. And so how do you that's kind of what Olympia Strong is looking at. How do you take these data points and what you're hearing from people, and how do you build long-range strategies to address these things? In that Olympia Strong work, there's 4 real focus areas of what we heard, and one was on career pathways and sort of workforce pathways and education. And so folks telling us like, hey, I need a way to earn a higher income, and I need the career pathway and educational opportunities. We heard about we want to have a really strong and resilient small business network and community here, and the technical resources and tools to access capital for the small business that we have here. That was another really big one. We heard about this idea of community pride and lovability, and hey, we want to be proud that we live here. So a lot of stuff in there, but we heard a lot. The biggest one we heard about was housing affordability and home ownership. More and more folks want that opportunity for home ownership and are feeling it slip farther and farther away with just the cost of housing, the lack of supply, increasing interest rates. So what can the city do? I look at the example that we did with Habitat for Humanity. We've got an awesome project moving forward. It's Habitat. It's their largest project in Thurston County on some property that the city owns or owned. We sold to them for $1 to have them build over 120 affordable home ownership opportunities for our community. So that's how do we take the things that we're hearing and turn them into actionable objectives?
Yeah.
So,
Mike, you twice now have used the word lovability.
Yeah.
And I've heard you use that many times, and we use it in a lot of the work that we do.
Yeah.
What's that mean to you?
What does lovability mean to me? I believe that love is it's a powerful emotion. I think sometimes people get uncomfortable with it. I love Olympia. Olympia is a character in my story. Like, it is a part of my family, and I love this place.
Yeah, me too.
And I think that a community that has a deep sense of love for its place, I think that they can weather heavier storms. And I think that they'll be more resilient. I think that a community that has a deep sense of pride and love in its place, they share the story of their place. They attract people to their place. It draws tourists into their place. It makes investors go, why do people love this place so much? I should be there.
Yeah.
And so to me, part of the work from an economic development standpoint is, how do we make this place as lovable as possible? How do we make it so that our residents have such a deep sense of pride that they are almost boastful about how much they love this place? That's the goal.
I love that, Mike. And I say this too about when you love something or someone, you don't give up on it.
No.
Right? You fight harder, you work harder to make it the place that you want it to be. And I see that come out in a lot of the work that we're doing here, that our employees are doing here, that the downtown business owners, everything they put into what they're trying to do here, because we all love this place and we want to see it succeed.
All in for Olympia.
Yeah.
Yeah, all in. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about prosperity.
Yes.
So, you've talked about, lifting people up and creating opportunities. And what's community prosperity look like? So, and maybe even fast forward a little bit, Mike, 5 to 10 years from now, if all of the things in our Olympia Strong are starting to come to fruition, what's that look like?
Yeah. Well, prosperity is absolutely one of those big goals there. I look at prosperity in the sense that people are given the opportunity, or at least shown the pathway to how they can be successful and thrive here. And so those investments in prosperity, how can someone have upward financial mobility, as an example? That's a method of, or a measure of, prosperity. There's some things that we're doing here that prior to COVID and the Thurston Strong and Olympia Strong work that we were doing, this city had not done. Workforce development is one of those. So I look at that as a prosperity objective. So when we talk about workforce development, we're talking about partnering with an entity like Pacific Mountain Workforce Development or the Chamber of Commerce, and we've done some projects with them on how do we take an individual who has said, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable with how much I'm earning and I want to get onto a more secure career pathway and career track. So we at the city, we have invested in programs with those two different partners. One was aimed at actively homeless individuals, getting them back into the workforce and getting them some of the skills. We called that Journey to Jobs. That was an awesome program. We had 92 individuals enrolled in that program. 22 went on to full-time employment.
That's awesome.
We had 11 that ended up finding permanent housing through that. So, and it was just a way to connect them to job opportunities and partner with various nonprofits and organizations that if they took them on, that there would be some funding to pay for them to be there. We have another one that we call the Olympia Career Hub. That's a project that we do with the Chamber of Commerce, the Thurston County Chamber of Commerce. That one we've been focusing on construction trades. So we've had a 4-week-long construction trade sort of boot camp, if you will.
Yeah.
We have now over 90 graduates of that program. We have issued 280, almost 300 professional certifications in flagging, forklift operating, and OSHA safety. Last I heard, 75% of the folks that went through that program that we're still able to keep in contact with have full-time employment right now.
Love that.
In a career field, the trades, the construction trades, that's something that we desperately need here, and those are great jobs and great opportunities. And they're also AI proof. So that's another thing I sort of think about. ChatGPT is not going to build your house.
No.
And so
I'm not stopping in the road
or
for,
slow
for
down
them.
cars. Right?
yeah. So we need those kind of jobs in our community, and I think it's an awesome opportunity. And I've been really proud to see the city step into that space. We were holding those trainings in the Armory, but that's been a really sort of a fun one. And I look at those as that's a prosperity measure. How do you take someone that was saying, hey, my job in this service industry, I felt slightly insecure, maybe I lost hours or lost the job during COVID, and now I have a professional certification in this and a pathway into the construction trades, which feels like there's a real opportunity for upward mobility.
And some hope.
And some hope.
Hope.
Right. And we talked with Darian about hope.
Yeah.
Right. And, we also talked to Darian about her ecosystem of things. And Mike, you're part of her ecosystem
Oh,
of things.
absolutely.
Right?
Darian and I work quite a bit together.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are partnering on lots of things and assisting in lots of things. I mean, the Habitat's a great example of things where you've worked together on. And, Journey to Jobs, this whole idea of, you mentioned formerly houseless individuals that we've provided job training. They've gone on to get jobs. Some of them got on to get permanent housing. That may not exist without those types of programs.
Yeah, I also think too is everybody's looking for the easy button on housing affordability. Just like, let's push one button and that's going to fix all of the housing affordability. There isn't a single button. There's a lot of knobs. It's
It's a control panel.
yeah, it's a control panel. So there's cost of materials, cost of lands, permitting expensive, cost of labor, financing costs, all of these things. Certain things the city has our finger on that dial. Some we don't. But one thing that we were hearing was we didn't have an adequate labor force here to really even be able to meet the needs of some of the construction that we had. And so how do we take something where we had a community saying we want to be upskilled, we want more opportunity, and then actually meet a housing need of creating construction labor force as well. So Darian and I kind of trade baseball cards on those ideas quite a bit.
Yeah, it's amazing how all these programs work together, right? And I think Darian talked a lot about that too when she was here. Just about all the other departments and programs, and Mike, you do the same. You touched lots of different departments and programs with the work that you're doing, and it just again makes me really proud to see how you guys really work together and pull together around common things that you're working on, and you see what each other needs and say, you know what, I can help you there, and you jump in.
Pretty cool. So what's next for Olympia Strong?
Funding.
We need some money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that work was started with COVID relief dollars, and those contracts will come to an end. And in some ways, we have funding to do certain things. I look at like that component that is about community pride and lovability. The passage of the cultural access tax, that's a piece that leads into that. So there's funding for things like that. We have lodging tax that can help with things like that. But I think that it's pretty clear we want to continue to do work in getting more affordable housing and more home ownership opportunities online, and access to capital for small business startups, and more of this workforce development thing. So it's going to be a lot of looking at grants and chasing opportunities and exploring what works. That's, I think, the big one. I'm still kind of analyzing some of the work that came out of this to try to understand how do we continue to modify it. The needs of this community are going to be changing all the time. Technology changes things. I sort of joked about AI, but you look at AI, or you look at automation, or you look at any sort of disruptive technology, it's going to have an impact on our community, and how do we adapt to that? So
yeah. So how about downtown? You're going to we're going to get more of those cool lights, or
I would love to continue to do more stuff downtown. I will say I get asked about downtown a lot. And I do have a tool that can kind of track and monitor activity. So it's what we call geofencing. And so you can draw sort of a boundary on a map online, and it will give me an indication of how much cell phone activity has gone through, and you can kind of narrow that down, and it'll tell me, how many of those were tourists, or how long did they stay, or how many visitors did we have. And when I look at downtown, things have changed. And I don't know if they'll ever go back. But right now, our data is showing that we are seeing more visitors downtown now than we had in 2019 pre-pandemic.
Wow.
Now, the times of the day that they're here is different. Our weekends are performing much stronger. Our lunch hours are not. And I think that that's just a relation to remote work, what happens at the Capitol campus, all of those things. So things have changed, but I do feel that downtown is really on a great pathway. We're seeing vacancies fill in. We're seeing new businesses open. It just feels really exciting. More events going on downtown.
Yeah.
So, a big partner in that for you has been the ODA, Olympia Downtown Alliance, and talk to us a bit about how important that partnership is in the work that you do.
Yeah, I think what we found out during COVID is the challenges that we were facing as a city were too big for us to take on alone. And so finding partners that we could work with and help them build capacity, and then they would help amplify our message and get out to more people. That's the model that we use.
Mm-hmm.
And ODA has been an exceptional partner. We've seen them, they help us address issues with graffiti, with keeping downtown feel safe and clean. We've done this whole Love Oli brand.
Yeah.
Is a really cool thing. We've even had partnerships with them on events. They have their Love Oli Summerfest coming up this summer, June 22nd,
June 22nd
and 23rd.
Yes, and 23rd.
Great live concerts in the middle of downtown. They have done a lot with this lighting work that we've done. They've been our key partner on there. So I would say there are those folks that still feel like, hey, downtown isn't a place for me. I would say give it another shot.
Yeah.
I think now come on down during this Summerfest event that happens on June 22nd, 23rd, and I think you will see a vibrancy going on in downtown that it's just exciting.
Well, the Summerfest just has picked up year over year. I told this to Todd Cutts, that it just keeps getting bigger and better and bolder. And the visitation every time my wife and I are down here is just amazing. Just running into everybody.
And I think this year it's bringing back the pet parade.
Yeah, Pet Parade came back last year. We're bringing it back again this year. That'll be on the Saturday of the event.
Yeah.
So
Pretty cool.
Well, awesome stuff, Mike. So one of the final areas I wanted to talk to you about was our partnership with the Squaxin Island Tribe. So as our community knows, we have an accord with the Squaxin Island Tribe, and one of the pieces of that accord is around economic development. So you've got some pretty exciting prospects working with the Squaxin Island Tribe going on right now.
I do. This is probably one of my favorite things that I think I'm working on. I'd never done like a government to government deal like this, and so it's been fun to work with a tribal government on this. So what we have going is the city owns a piece of property. It's the Lee Creighton Justice Center. It was our former courts, former jail, our current courts, former jail, and former city hall right there off of Plum Street. We have entered into an agreement with the Squaxin Island Tribe to allow them to do some feasibility and analysis on if they were to own that property, what would they do with it? And so we're exploring potentially selling them that property and allowing Squaxin to have a real economic footprint back in downtown Olympia again. So still working on that. That's kind of their story to tell with what they would want to do. But it is a lot of, it's just that kind of a partnership building has just been a really fun exercise.
I'm really excited to see that project continue to go forward. I know there'll be lots more to share later.
Yeah.
And we'll keep an eye out.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
So, Mike, as we wrap up,
Yeah.
what are you most proud of in the work that you do?
Boy, that is just a hard question. I'm just really lucky to be someone that gets to do the kind of work that I do in the city that I grew up in and love. As I mentioned, my wife is from here, and we have two little boys in school here. To be able to work on projects that may even have some legacy associated with them. I look at what this city has done and the kinds of things that we have invested in. And I'm not sure everybody even knows this, but the Children's Museum, that's a city-owned building.
Yep.
The Farmers Market, that's a city-owned building. The Washington Center for Performing Arts, that's a city-owned building.
Yep.
We make investments in place that make our community feel vibrant and unique and lovable.
Yep.
And it's those kinds of projects. I think bringing on the Armory is another example of one that adds to that really sort of unique sense of place that we have here. So I love those. I love, I will tell you, the construction boot camps, they had their graduation ceremonies for when the cohorts would graduate from that. Rarely a dry eye in the room. So if you want, those were just watching individuals take a step forward and achieve a goal, and then be a part of our much needed construction workforce ecosystem that we have here. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you said you're lucky you get to do what you do. And I'm going to double down and say we're lucky that we have you here.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Getting to do what you do. Because I can't imagine anybody else but Mike Reid doing what you do here. And I mentioned it earlier about you're one of the biggest cheerleaders I know.
Yeah.
That's constantly trying to find every possible way to put Olympia on the map
Yeah.
and make it a great place to live and a great place to be. So just thank you for what you do.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, that's all the official questions we have for you. However, we have a feature in our program called the mailbag.
Yes, and actually, you get to be the first. We're going to crack open the mailbag for the very first time.
Okay.
And you're our guinea pig. You're the first. You're going to be it. So, this question is around the Artesian Commons.
Okay.
And the question comes from us from Jenna Kay. And it says, several years ago, the downtown park connected to the artesian well closed and has remained closed. Jenna would like to know about the future of this site and will it ever reopen? And what are the future plans?
That's a great question. And it actually kind of ties back to the what I was just talking about. So the city. So yes, Jenna K.
There is a Christmas. There is a Santa Claus.
There is. We do want to reopen that space. You know, it's right in the middle of what we call our creative district in our downtown, and it's an important piece of property. And so myself and my teammate Daisha Versaw, she's the other economic development member of the team. And she's leading the project. I'm supporting. We're going to bring that property back online, and we are going to kind of look at it in the same way that as I mentioned, the city owns the farmers market property. We own the Children's Museum. We own the Washington Center. And we find an operator for those spaces. So we may own the buildings, and we find an operator to achieve the objectives and goals of that space. We want to look at that piece of property in a very similar way, where I think kind of the concepts that we're looking at is how can it support the creative economy of downtown? We're looking at, could it be a night market, a creative market, a craft market, something like that? And how do we bring forward then an operator for that space that will be successful, and what will they need? So we're in the early phases. We're doing some outreach to the stakeholders in the area and various potential partners. And then eventually we'll release like a request for proposals from potential operators, and we'll make a decision and move forward.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It is exciting. I'm excited to see what happens with that space and to get it reopened. Just like you said, it is a very important parcel in the heart of our downtown.
Yeah.
And getting it energized and activated is going to be great for all of us.
Yeah. I will add one cool thing. We did pursue a grant from the Washington Washington Arts Commission. And it was a grant for that piece of property for some infrastructure improvements, but specifically lighting. You know, we were kind of talking about it before. People want to see a visible change. If you recall, during downtown, during the holidays, there's some really unique lighting that occurs downtown. We want to bring that kind of a lighting style to that space so it can feel safe and operable and welcoming even during the evening hours. So really kind of light it up with a unique kind of environment.
Love it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, that is our time with you today. Just thanks again for being our guest on the podcast, and thanks for all you do for the City of Olympia.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So, Kelly, that's it for episode 2. Bring us home.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to also join my thanks to Mike, Reid, for coming and for bringing your love of home to the city, you know, because that really seems to be the root of it all here, and for what you do. Also want to thank the Olympia community for listening to Actually Olympia, the podcast. So where you're going to find our podcast, it's going to be everywhere. Everywhere you'll find a podcast.
Everywhere?
Everywhere, Jay. Everywhere you find a podcast. We ask you to give us a little love and like and subscribe.
We need our
follow.
clicks.
Yeah, we need some numbers, please. Click that thing. Click it a couple of times. You can get a video version of this podcast on olytv3.com.
I'm just going to say, Kelly, because hearing us is one thing. Seeing us just takes it up a whole nother level.
Amazing. You'll see my glasses, which I keep taking on and off. So that's a little, a little blocking for the theater folks. You can also download the Oly TV app Just go to your the Apple Store or the Google Store, and you can download it. It's a really good app. We do monthly episodes of Actually Olympia, the podcast. I think next time Jay's going to make the chiefs come and talk to us. So the fire chief and the police chief.
Bring on the Chiefs.
Bring on the chiefs. It's kind of a crazy idea, but also a wonderful idea because they're pretty cool people. We ask you to send us your questions, just like Jenna K and the artesian question, because we have a mailbag that will open on air and ask it. So this podcast is about being a touch point for the community, and we make that possible by taking your questions, and no question is too big or too small. So you can send all your questions to olytv@ci.olympia.wa.us. That's the email. I'll do it one more time. olytv@ci.olympia.wa.us. And that is it.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. All right. Take care.